What is going on, fight fans? We are back with another roundtable. I know you guys have been waiting for this one, so we're here. We have Kinsler, the Global Communications Manager. We have Ash Habib, the Creative Director, and myself, Edward, the Content Manager. Now, there are some important topics that we have to talk about. And of course, the first thing that we need to jump into for the community is the most recent update and the feedback that we got from the community, and what we have to say about that recent update that we put out. And the first person I want to jump to is you, Will. Gonna throw this
Yes.
question on to you.
Yeah. So before I answer that, can I just ask Ash where you're at? Because I know where you're at, but I don't think everybody knows, and it's kind of hard to tell. But it doesn't look like you're at SCI today. You're not at the studio.
That's
Oh yeah.
correct, Will. Yeah, so I'm at GDC at the moment. So yeah, out on my travels at the GDC conference. But like this is important, right? So wanted to make sure that I'm here to talk to the community.
All right, we'll do it from the road, and this is like that's the theme of our week is travel, because Edward and I are gonna hop on to a plane this week to go to PAX East to show the game there, and then you're gonna join us there as well. So it's like SCI road trip week this week. Anyway, so yeah, I wasn't avoiding your question, Edward. I promise. I promise. Now it sounds
Community
like I
wants to
didn't want to
know.
talk about the update, and so I'm going to acknowledge that because they'll definitely say it in the comments. But basically, yeah, I mean, I think we put out an update last week that didn't quite land the way that we wanted it to, and that's one of these things about game development, right? That sometimes you have these moments where you go, yeah, that didn't land quite the way that we wanted. It wasn't, didn't accomplish what we had hoped. When you think about early access, one, it's like we know it's a journey, and we're gonna take our time and try to get things right and continue to improve the game. And I think with this update, I think maybe we made some players feel like we don't fully understand, the issues that they're experiencing with the game, and that's because some of the changes, especially like the balance changes, are things that are like partial changes that in the context of other things that we'll do in the future that might make sense, but alone didn't really work out the way that we wanted, or would have hoped in terms of how they were received. So I guess the first thing is, sorry guys, we need to do better than we did and communicate better around that kind of stuff. And that's partially why we're doing this today, right? Is to be able to talk through some of those things. We want to make sure you guys understand that we do know what the issues are with the game. We're an indie studio. We're learning how to do this. I told Ash, before before we started, I said it's not the first time we've stumbled over the last couple of years. It probably won't be the last, but these are all learning moments for us to be able to improve how we do things, improve our processes, to make sure that when we put out an update, that you guys clearly understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that it's making the game better. So I guess we're going to talk through some of those specific areas, the things that we know that you care about throughout the rest of this episode.
And do you have anything to add on that part, Ash, when it comes to the most recent update?
Yeah, I think like Will said, the some of the updates we made probably in isolation, it might not make, a lot of sense given the some of the issues that, some of our community is facing right now. But some of that context was around, we've got some larger updates coming down the line, and some of those changes were in preparation for that. But in hindsight, it's like, well, was it the right thing to do in this moment? And as Bill said, it's a mistake that I think we've acknowledged, and it's not going to be the last, but we're certainly learning as we go on this journey.
All right. So moving on from that, one thing that, of course, yes, we stumbled on that, and we're definitely trying to make sure that we do things much more transparent for you guys moving forward with the updates and all of these things. But to be more specific, let's move into the things that they want to know about. And one of those things is stamina. That's huge for the community. So we want to know, or the community wants to know, What's going on with the stamina? Where are we going with this? What are we doing for the next updates when it comes to stamina? And I'll throw this question over to you, Ash.
So, I mean, look, stamina and the changes that we're making, it's a big one, right? And it's one that I want to make sure we get it right, because we have made a few changes and a few tweaks to try and make it feel better, but it impacts a few of the other game areas, right? So, for example, it also impacts the AI as well as PvP. And one of the challenges that we came across was that uh, a human player doesn't fight exactly the same way as the AI. So, it brought up a few other challenges internally in terms of, what we can do to address that. So we have made, some changes in terms of how that will impact, the experience for a player, right? So I think the overall feedback right now in terms of stamina is you can throw like 1,000 punches, 1,200 punches, and the game essentially isn't punishing enough in terms of what you can do. So we're looking to obviously make that right balance between the AI and obviously PvP. So we are making those changes, which the end result will be you won't be able to throw those 13, 14, 1,500 punches in a full match and still end up with a big chunk of stamina. So those are some of the changes that we're making. I mean, we made some adjustments to like how much stamina a power punch costs. But our game has like almost 70 punches, right? So there's a lot of balancing that we'll continue to do. And whilst early access takes place, even the next balance update won't be our final one. So the more data, the more feedback we get from the community, we'll be making those changes. And I think that's one thing that's really important, is that we are listening, and we're making changes where we can. So yeah, the next update that drops, we will be looking to address some of those stamina issues, and at the same time, we are building more things in the back end, to allow us to customize certain mechanics more than others, because we don't have a simple boxing game, right? You don't just go forward and push a few buttons to throw some punches. There's so many intricacies involved, and that's what I want to make sure we do right. We don't want to just push out balance updates constantly. We want to make sure that a balance update feels right, and the community can see that change hopefully in the next update that we drop.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, right? Because, I think people broadly understand why certain things take longer than others, right? Like people understand it takes a long time to build like a career mode or, certain large fixes or whatever that go into the game. I think balancing is one of those things where, we did tweak some things pretty quickly right out of the gate. But to me, it feels like a thing that look at data and you test and stuff like that in terms of like things that might take more time than you would want it to, right? That's part of the reason, right? It's because we do need to take time to test and make sure that we're that we actually feel good about the changes that are going out, and understand exactly what we're doing, because we can make it worse. That's the other thing, is we can tune stuff too far in the other direction and make it worse, and we know that you'll tell us that if it happens. But yeah, it is pretty delicate in terms of how some of the systems impact each other.
We knew this was going to happen as well, right? There's an element of using early access to make sure we improve the game as much as we can. And you know, for example, having a game like Undisputed, with our relatively limited QA team in terms of the size, it's one thing trying to balance everything internally, with a very small number of people, and then you know as soon as that's out in the open, and then having you know a lot of people then playing the game and giving us that feedback. So the pool of data is just obviously a lot bigger. And again, this is something that we're expecting as far as not just balancing, but every aspect of the game, right?
Yeah, and those things, I mean, those, just so we're clear, like those overarching systems we're talking about, because I don't want to be vague about it, right? It's like everything from, if you're talking about stamina, it's like how the players are, how the fighters are rated, how how that ties into throwing combinations versus throwing a punch one off, throwing stuff like power punches, right? Like there's just a bunch of different things. There's the part where it's like body punches that you hit somebody else with that cause them to lose stamina, but then there's other areas of the game that we're looking to address, like certain body punches land a little bit better right now than we want them to, for the uppercut fans.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're working on that one too. And yeah, and so that's what you're talking about, right? When you say that, is that like there's a bunch of those different things that we have to take into account. Change one thing, it's almost like playing whack-a-mole, right? It's like you do just the one thing, and then it pops up somewhere else. And we try to be as thoughtful about it as possible. But yeah, the data for sure tells us more than anything else that we could possibly do.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's an important element, of course, stamina, but one major element that a lot of people want to talk about and that a lot of people are concerned about when it comes to the game is the online issues. Because me being a competitive player, I want to make sure that I'm in this balanced space where I can play and it's based off of the technicality of what I'm doing versus what my opponent is doing. And a lot of people are bringing concerns when it comes to the online issues. So I'm going to pass this on to you, Will. What are we doing to move towards getting it in a better space when it comes to online competitive gaming?
Yeah, so you remember when I said that there's some things that take a longer time than others. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that's in the online bucket falls into that. And I'll talk about a couple of different things, because online is broad, but there's a few specific things. So the first one has to do with cheating, right? So we know some number of people are cheating in the game. A couple weeks ago, we put out an update, and as part of that, we started taking action against people who are cheating based on player reports. So we've been able to remove some number of cheaters from the game. It's an intermediary step for us, because the longer term work that we want to do towards cheating has to do with integrating certain other back end work, stuff that's bigger features, under the hood stuff. And so that's why it's taking a long time. I don't think that it's particularly complicated in order to get our cheat detection up and running. It's just more about where that sits against other work that has to happen in order for us to integrate that. And so it's going to take longer than we like. That said, the reports are super helpful. So if you're seeing those people in game that are cheating, you believe somebody's cheating, send us a report. We're looking at them every single week, and it does help. To be clear, this is not something we think is okay in our game. It's not a thing we're going to stand for. We are going to get these people out of our game. It's just taken us a little bit longer to implement the solution that we think is the best solution. And so right now we're taking those intermediary steps. The other piece, has more with online, has to do with stability. And so I'll use that as a general term to talk about things like ghost punches and desync, and the surrenders that are happening for people that are unintentional. And so those things in some way have to do with each other. It's a bigger chunk of work. It's complex, as you can imagine, because it has to do with with online and more complicated pieces of stuff that's way over my head in terms of how does it work. We rely on our team for that. But Ash, maybe you can talk a little bit about, at least in a general way, how we're approaching handling the stability part of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the online portion of the game is a critical one to us, right? And we know there's issues that we have to resolve, and we're working hard to try and resolve those as quickly as we can. But as you've said, unfortunately, this is one of those um, you know functions in the game that is very technical, and some of the issues that we're trying to resolve as well. It's quite a large task. But having said that, we do have a plan in place to improve general online stability and the playing experience. So right now we're even looking at a couple of options we've got in terms of expanding our resource to focus on the multiplayer issues. So that's something that's taking place currently, which again is for us it's just all about improving that online play experience. And I guess going back to that earlier part of this is our first title. We are in the studio. I mean, there's some things that we've done in the game, which makes it harder for our online networking engineers to try and get around, right, with like how fluid movement is in the game. We've built the game, obviously from the ground up in terms of having trying to make the most authentic boxing game possible, right? We didn't think, oh, how can we make a game that's going to be easiest in terms of how can we develop this for online. For us it was all about how can we create the most authentic boxing game. And then once we did that, it was almost a case of, right, okay, now we need to make this perfect this for online. So that was something that I wasn't really looking to compromise on, because there are solutions out there. There are ways that can be a game can be made in terms of having it so that it is easier to code and make it work online. But yeah, that's not something we were willing to do. And whilst it's a little bit painful right now in terms of how the game is performing online, we've again we've got a plan in place to put that in. And over the course of the next few weeks and months, we'll look to certainly improve the online playing experience.
All right. Now, moving into the technical in-game elements or going back to it, we talked about stamina. One thing that is incredibly important to the community as well is damage and how that's working. And what are we going to do are there going to be changes done to damage? Because people want to know some things to the community doesn't make sense. So I'm going to pass this one.
Because right now, I'm gonna say this. I know you guys are gonna be so mad. Because spammage can lead to damage, Ash. We can't have that.
If something rhymes, it's true. So we have to circle.
That's a good one, Will. That's a good one.
So Ash, of course, Will just kind of touched on that, but what are we doing when it comes to the damage and the location, like location specific damage, things of that nature?
So look, we've completely changed the system. So I think that's something the community will be glad to hear about. So whilst we haven't, replaced or gotten rid of, the individual damage side. So you have left, center, and right for both head and body. So there's essentially 6 damage zones. So the damage zones still exist, but we've changed it in a way where you can't just spam like one side of the face and then hopefully that will knock that person out or get that person into a dazed state. So we've changed it to a system which we feel is more balanced and fair. So we now we've implemented a system now which has an overall head health and an overall body health. So you can still spam the same side, but it's not going to give you the same result as the game currently kind of provides. So it's just more of a balanced approach. And again, it will encourage players to use combinations. Again, it's like almost 70 punches in the game. People shouldn't, we shouldn't create a game where we've got almost 70 punches and actually the way to beat somebody is just continually spam your left hook or your right hook, because that is, it's not great, on our part. So I feel like we've given all these tools and mechanics to players to utilize. But again, look, this is part of that learning process, right, for us in terms of finding out how people are playing the game. Because when I play the game, I play it as, like trying to play it as a genuine boxing fight where, I wouldn't expect a boxer to go in and just throw, 100 left hooks. But that's not how gaming works, right? So we've just got to make sure that all the mechanics are fairly balanced and it's a good experience regardless how anybody wants to play, right? So that is a change that we feel pretty happy about, and that'll be dropping in an update soon.
All right. Thank you for that, Ash. We appreciate it. And now let's move on to the ratings part of this conversation. This is important. This is the metadata, the metagame for people. They want to know the ratings and what's going on with that. Is there any changes? Is there any improvements that are going to be made? So I'm going to pass this on to you, Will. When it comes to ratings, where are we going with the rating system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like everything else in the game. It's a work in progress. So I think it's something that players are pretty passionate about. Obviously, having to rate fighters right now while we're in the middle of all these other changes to core gameplay systems is tough because the changes to those systems also will impact what happens with the ratings, right? If we're changing stamina, and we've got a handful of ratings that have to do with stamina and a handful of them that have to do with damage, and we're changing those things. It's difficult. But when you look at the amount of fighters that we have in the game now across all of them, we definitely think there's room for improvement. So we've made some ratings changes over the last few weeks in the updates, but we want to engage in more conversation with players about what do they think about some of those things. So last week we opened up a channel on Discord to talk specifically about ratings, because I know there's people in the community that are really passionate about this, that are like, if it's your favorite fighter, right? Like, my favorite fighters in the game, I have a strong opinion about. And so people are in there already giving us their thoughts about the ratings. And it's just a place where people can go and kind of like focus in on that conversation, which we haven't had before. It's sort of been mixed in with everything else. And so what we're trying to do is just engage you guys a little bit more on that topic. It's like everything else. We are a small studio, so the amount of time that we're spending on ratings, I think we all wish it could be a little bit more, in terms of our ability to like zero in and focus on it. But I think a conversation with the community will help us, to target that in and at least understand, hey, what are the things you guys think are most out of line. We definitely know that there's fighters that are have categories that need to come down a little bit. At the top end of our sort of elite fighters, there's certainly some that need to be boosted in certain areas as well. And so I won't give a sneak preview of the next ratings change, but I will invite everybody to the conversation and let you know it's a thing that we're working on. We care about it. We know how important it is. And it's something that we want to get right because it impacts how all of the fighters perform in our game.
Thank you for that, Will. And Ash, I have a question for you in regards to what we're talking about here. We spoke about online, but not everybody plays or everybody aspires to play player versus player. Some people want to play against the AI, and they want to make sure that that experience is an engaging experience. So, what is the plans that we have to improve AI moving forward?
So AI, as part of our roadmap, we do have some plans in place to increase the capabilities of the AI, right? Again, I think building this from the ground up, we have the player essentially has so much freedom in terms of how they utilize, whether it's footwork, whether it's punches, whether it's pivoting around. We feel like we've given players so much freedom in terms of how to play the game and outbox an opponent, right? And to expect the AI off the bat to compete with human players, given that we've given all that freedom, it's a tough ask. But at the same time, as part of our roadmap, we do have some changes coming into play to give the AI more personality, right? I think that's the goal that we want in terms of how the AI can react to what the player's doing. So right now there's a limited number of um, kind of sliders that we have for the AI in the back end in terms of how an AI will respond. We have significantly improved that, and the number of different mechanics the AI now has at their disposal. So again, this was kind of part of our journey, part of our roadmap. and we'll continually improve, the AI throughout early access, right? So, even when the next update drops, or even when, the next AI improvements come in, those won't be the last, right? So we do have a number of AI updates that will be coming as part of our roadmap in early access, because we do want the boxes we have in our game to try and that they fight as close as possible to how they fought in real life, right? So for us, it's just about making sure the AI also has enough tools at its disposal to utilize what we put in the game. So yeah, I mean, look, it's just part of that journey, and I'm excited about some of the things that the AI will have in terms of the behaviors that people will notice.
All right. Do you have anything to add on that, Will?
I was gonna say AI, like to me, I feel like working on this game, I've learned more about AI behavior in games than anything else that I've worked on because, before we had the ability to play online set up in the game, that's what I was doing every day. I was just playing AI every day for like, over a year. And man, it seems like really hard to get right, because I'd tell Ash, like, first of all, it's too easy, right? Like I'd always tell him that, like, it's way too easy. I know we took some steps towards making it difficult, and now some of the things that it does, at least on certain difficulties, are like, even tougher, where like either they don't get tired, or sometimes people will say, man, I just feel like I got insta countered by the AI or whatever. But it's hard when you pull it apart and break it apart and think about all of the things that have to happen. Is like, um one, you want it to be a challenge, right? You have to get the difficulty settings right. So on those lower levels, you want it to give you a challenge. But if I put on the lowest one, basically I'm trying to go in and probably knock fighters out, right? It's not because I'm trying to be challenged. And then on undisputed difficulty, I do want it to be hard. And then you have the areas in between that, like on undisputed, it's difficult to make it hard because, like Ash said, we've given you so many tools. So I'm thinking about, like, well, it's like I'd tell them, like, well, today I can just touch the AI to the body, and it's too easy, or I just do this thing or that thing. And it's always trying to think of all the things that players will do with the tools that we have. And with AIs, you have these like fighter archetypes that determine what kind of fight they give you. Are they aggressive? Is the boxer puncher? Is it the swarmer? Is it the outside fighter? And we kind of have that generally. But then there's the part of it that's like, well, as soon as you put the player into the equation, then the AI has to like react to what they're doing too, right? Because it's like, if it's a swarmer, but you're countering them every time, are they gonna just keep coming at you? Or like, there's all these different variables that are a part of it. So yeah, what I've learned is just like, it's really complex. I think we know that there's plenty of room for improvement there. I'm excited to see some of those changes come in the next update. But as Ash said, it's gonna be more like a series of changes over the course of early access, where hopefully we're stepping it up every time and looking at the feedback from players and looking at the data, from how people are playing it and how it's going, win percentages at each of the difficulties and stuff like that, or punch stats, or there's all these different things that we can look at to understand how the AI is going. So yeah, it's pretty complicated.
Well, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and end the roundtable here. We hope that we've addressed the important concerns of the community, so you guys see that we are constantly working towards improving the game and taking your feedback to make the game the best that it can be. Just a quick reminder, guys, we are at GDC and PAX this week. We have Ash Habib literally talking to us right now from GDC, and of course, me and Will Kinsler will be at PAX with Ash as well this week. So until the next one, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next roundtable. Peace out.